Today I'm going to go over your study guide and all of the things that you need to know for your Unit 1 test on Wednesday, August the 30th. As you see here, you will be shared these questions about regions of Georgia, continents, about the fall line, about the Appalachian Mountains. Then we get into the Mississippian period of our native Indians, and then we will get into some things about the transportation systems of Georgia. Then we get into the colonization, Spanish missions. Why did England, Spain want to colonize the New World? What lands did they claim? Who was the first European to explore the interior? Hernando de Soto. And then we'll talk about Spanish missions and then diseases that the Europeans brought to the native people of Georgia. So, we will begin looking at and going back and looking at the regions. So, let's go ahead and look at the regions. And so, we all know that a region is the basic unit of study in geography. It is the area of Earth's surface that is defined by certain unifying characteristics. So the 5 regions were the Appalachian Plateau, the Ridge and Valley region, the Blue Ridge, the Piedmont Plateau, and the Coastal Plain. So let's talk about the Appalachian Plateau again. It is the tag corner. It is the southwest area of the smallest area. It's in northwest Georgia. It's called the tag corner because that's where Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia all meet. And there is a 100-mile long lookout mountain that you can see all of the different states that we've talked about. The second region is the Ridge and Valley region, made up of low valleys and narrow ridges, forests, and pastures. This is where your carpet industry is in northwest Georgia. Then we will get to the Blue Ridge region. The Blue Ridge is located in the northeast part of the state. It gets the highest precipitation compared to the rest of the state. It is part of the Appalachian Mountains that run to New York. The region has a mixture of sandy loam, so it's a blend of the clay, sand, and organic matter. And again, half of White County is in Blue Ridge, the northern half. When we get to the Piedmont, the southern half of White County is in this region. It begins in the northern mountains. It runs to central Georgia, where the fall line is. It has gently sloping hills and valleys. It's called the foot of the mountain. The biggest thing about this is that half of our state's population lives in this region because of the cities of Atlanta, Columbus, Macon, Augusta. All of these cities are located in the Piedmont region. Then we get to the coastal plain. 3/5 of the state is in the coastal plain. So in the eastern part of the coastal plain, along the coast, you're going to have different types of soil. And then in the western part of Georgia, southwestern Georgia, this is where you have your soil that is going to be able to grow crops like peanuts that cannot be grown anywhere else in Georgia. We talk about the Okefenokee Swamp that is located in the outer coastal plain. It's the largest swamp in North America. We talked about the barrier islands. There are 14 barrier islands that protect the shores from erosion and winds, storms, all of these things. That is the importance of the barrier islands. So when we look at a map of Georgia, we see the Appalachian Plateau, Ridge and Valley, Blue Ridge, Piedmont, and Coastal Plain. Next, we're going to talk about Georgia's 4 transportation systems. When we look at Georgia's transportation systems, we know that getting goods from the coast inland is a very important part of Georgia's economy. And so when we look at the first part that we're going to look at are the interstates. And so when we look at the interstate systems of Georgia, we see that Georgia has 1,244 miles of interstate highways that perform several functions that are vital to the state's economy. Georgia's interstate highways establish the state, especially for its capital, Atlanta, as a vital transportation hub for the Southeast. The state is served by a total of 15 interstates. Odd number interstates run north to south, and even-numbered interstates run east to west. So we're all familiar with Interstate 85. Here's Interstate 75, Interstate 20, Interstate 95 along the coast. Okay, and so interstates go out of Georgia. Interstates usually go from state to state to state, and sometimes interstates like Interstate 75 will go all the way from Miami, Florida, north of Detroit, Michigan, to Canada. Interstate 95 will go from Miami all the way to the Canadian border at Maine. So interstates are very important for commerce. This is why they were built, to transport goods from one port to another. The next thing is Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. It was built in the 1930s and named for two Atlanta mayors. It is the world's busiest passenger airport. There are daily flights to every continent except Antarctica. There are 5 runways that allow for 90 landings and 100 takeoffs every hour. Ports. Georgia has 2 major deepwater ports, Savannah and Brunswick. Georgia also has 2 inland barge terminals up rivers that you can take goods to. And those 2 barge terminals are Bainbridge and Columbus. For example, you go up the Apalachicola River, then in Georgia, when it changes to the Chattahoochee River, and that Chattahoochee River, you can go and you can bring goods all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to the city of Columbus. That is the most northern port that you can actually bring large ships up the Chattahoochee River. Savannah is the 5th largest container port in the nation. So Savannah is very, very important as a port city along the Atlantic Ocean. Railroads. Railroads in Georgia were first built from Savannah to other ports in Georgia. It brings goods from all over the world that can now be brought to rural Georgia. So you see here the Savannah. And so railroads were built from Savannah to other parts of the state. Railroads helped create the city of Terminus, which was renamed Marthasville, which was later renamed Atlanta. It was the central port point for the Atlantic and Pacifica Railroad lines. That name was merged to create Atlanta. Okay. The next part that I want to go over is the PowerPoint that is shared with you, the age of exploration. So why did Europe explore? One of the main reasons is that it was taking so long to use the Silk Road to transport goods from Europe to Eastern Asia, places like India and China that had been used, especially built by the Roman Empire in these roads. And so this Silk Road traded dyes, silk, perfume, gold, spices. We talked about the importance of salt in making and preserving your meat. A middleman is a trader who buys goods from producers and sells them to other traders and consumers. So we talked about the 3 G's of exploration: God, gold, and glory. Gold and spices were the main reasons behind exploration. The importance of, finding a faster route to India was desired. So Spain is going to really be the first country that is going to go and explore. You have to understand that shipbuilding had become a master craft at this point. And so by the 1500s, the Spanish had established numerous settlements in the New World. During this time period, the predominant religion in Europe was Christianity, in particular Catholicism, a branch of Christianity. European rulers wanted to spread the religion to other parts of the world. One of Spain's top priorities, this is important, it's a test question, with exploration was to convert non-Christians to Christianity, because the Spanish considered the American Indians in the New World to be uncivilized, and that they thought that they needed religion to fix them. They wanted to teach the natives the Christian faith and convert them to Catholicism. Many of Europe's explorations were for economic reasons. Europeans knew that they could make a lot of money as traders if they could get Asian goods for a cheaper price. The glory part. You wanted your country's empire to be bigger than your rivals. And so Great Britain wanted their empire to be bigger than the French Empire. France wanted theirs to be bigger than Spain. Spain wanted theirs to be bigger than Italy. And so the size of their empire is what is represented by the glory. European nations raced to gain new lands in order to be the greatest empire in the world. So when Christopher Columbus landed in 1492, he, again, as we talked about, thought that he was going west. Remember, we said that he did not know that North or South America existed. So when he thought that he was going west from Europe, he thought that he would just land back in Eastern Asia. And so when he landed in the Bahamas, he called the people Indians, and because he believed that he was in India. And so this is why the native people of North and South America were called Indians. Some of the colonies were begun by refugees from religious persecution, while others were primarily settled for economic gain and a fresh start. Most people that were in prison for tax purposes wanted to come to Georgia, and we'll get to that in the next unit. Colonies. Why were colonies so important? Colonies were sources of raw materials and food such as sugar, timber, rice, tobacco, and cotton. When we talked about the slave trade, Europeans began going to Africa to capture slaves and bring them to the New World for manual labor. If you look at this map of the triangular trade, or the triangular slave trade, it started in Europe. Europeans would go to Africa. Different African tribe leaders would sell their own people that were prisoners to the Europeans, and they would transfer them to either North or South America. Their labor would be used for goods that were then sent back to Europe. So that is what makes up the triangular trade. You need to make sure that your Quizlet is completed. So in your Quizlet, we were defining Paleo, Archaic, Woodland, Mississippian, Artifacts, Archaeology, Culture, Nomadic, Horticulture, Palisade, Slave, Middleman, European Exploration, Expedition, Hernando de Soto, Colony, Spanish Missions, and Plantations. I know that I didn't go over everything, but if you have these terms and you go back and you look at the PowerPoint that I have sent you, then you will be good to be able to succeed on your test that you will have on Wednesday. So when we look at the study guide, your goal will be to fill out these 30 questions for your study guide. It is going to be due on Tuesday. So at the end of class on Tuesday, it should be completed. So you will have Monday and Tuesday to work on your study guide. If you have any questions, please let me know. Email me any questions, and I'll be glad to help you with whatever that I can.